Napoleon Bonaparte's mystical experience in the Great Pyramid of Giza. We know that he was there around the late 1790s. Did we know that Napoleon Bonaparte had a mystical experience inside of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt? When some of his most trusted men asked Napoleon what had happened to him inside the pyramid, Napoleon replied, "Even if I told you, none of you would believe me." It's said that one night in August of 1799, the course of world history changed as Napoleon Bonaparte was inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. He experienced a secret that would change the fate of Napoleon forever. If we look back in history, we will find that in the summer of 1798, more than 30,000 French soldiers came to Egypt under the command of General Napoleon Bonaparte. His official mission was to liberate the Nile country from 3 centuries of Turkish rule, and incidentally to prevent the free navigation of the English ships to their eastern colonies. The young Napoleon, however, did something that no other person has ever done. He took with him over 100 scholars from all walks of life to study and write and copy what they could from the land of the pharaohs. Temples, tombs, mummies, tunnels, rich treasures, and sacred pyramids had been opened, revealing to the world a fascinating story. In fact, Napoleon's mission was both military and scientific. That is, the European continent rediscovers the lost treasures of ancient Egypt and then found another key that allowed the whole world to understand what the ancient Egyptians wrote thousands of years ago. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. As one of Napoleon's soldiers digs a trench around Rachin's medieval fortress, he accidentally finds one of the most important ancient Egyptian artifacts in history. It was the Rosetta Stone, as we call it, that helped scholars finally decipher Egyptian hieroglyphics. The Rosetta Stone was written in 3 languages: hieroglyphic and municipal and Greek. And from the Greek writings, researchers were finally able to find a parody in the Egyptian hieroglyphics and thus create a kind of a code to translate the ancient Egyptian hieroglyph texts. But Napoleon's campaign in Egypt also served a spiritual quest on earth that had disturbed the imagination of great historical figures. And like many of his contemporaries, Napoleon was attracted to Oriental exoticism and had read a very popular work until then, The Journey to Egypt and Syria by Constantine Volney, published in 1787, which tells many mysteries of civilizations of the area. During his campaign in Egypt, Napoleon traveled to the Holy Land as well and confronted the Turkish army and incidentally stayed overnight in Nazareth. As we know, after Jesus' birth, the Virgin Mary and Joseph took him to Egypt for safety, and then they came back and went to Nazareth, and that's where Jesus Christ grew up. So Napoleon stayed overnight in Nazareth, and this trip took place April 14, 1799. During the same year, in August, Napoleon returned to Cairo, Egypt. When he decided to sleep in the Great Pyramid of Giza, he was escorted to the king's chamber, which at the time was difficult to access. The king's chamber is located inside the Great Pyramid and is a rectangular room about 10 meters long, 5 meters wide. It's, in other words, by 33 feet by 15 feet wide, formed by granite slabs, walls, and a smooth ceiling, completely without decorative elements, and contains only the sarcophagus. Napoleon the Great spent about 7 hours in the Great Pyramid, and as soon as dawn came, he came out of the pyramid pale and scared. And when some of his most trusted men asked Napoleon what had happened inside the pyramid, Napoleon replied, "Even if I told you, none of you would believe me." It's believed that the night that Napoleon spent in the Great Pyramid changed his life forever. Napoleon returned to France, won politically, and achieved great victories in the following months. He managed to end the government of the French Revolution. Interestingly, according to Peter Tompkins, Napoleon imitated the steps of Alexander the Great, who wanted to be alone in the king's palace and spent the night in the royal chamber in search of perhaps a greater purpose. And we know that the ancient Egyptian priests gave Alexander the Great of about 330 BC an amulet for victories. And the Imam also gave the same type of amulet to Napoleon Bonaparte, telling him that the amulet would give him victories. The Imam who ushered Napoleon into the Great Pyramid said that he was the third emperor in 3,000 years to come and visit and sleep inside the pyramid. The first one was Alexander the Great, 330 BC. The second one was Julius Caesar. And then the third one was Napoleon Bonaparte. And each of these emperors were given an amulet from something that was inside the Great Pyramid. Unfortunately, Napoleon Bonaparte lost the amulet in one of his visits to Austria in an Austrian inn. When the Austrian inn burned down, he lost the amulet as well. From then on, he kept on having defeats instead of victories. This is translated for you from a Greek article based on ancient code. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.